Welcome to Muckrakers, where we dig through the latest happenings around so-called AI. In each episode, we highlight recent events, contextualize the most important ones, and try to separate muck from meaning. I'm your host, Jacob Hames, and joining me is my co-host, Igor Kravchuk.
Thanks, Jacob. This week, I don't really have any funny stories to lighten mood in the beginning, but I would like to talk about the serious implications of Mecha-Hitler Grok.
Okay, so that's when, I guess a couple weeks ago now, Grok decided that it was a good idea to start saying things like Heil Hitler and being anti-Semitic, and then they had to roll that back. So besides, the obvious part of that's not good, why do you want to talk about it?
Because there's problems in the wider discourse around AI safety and AI control that I think people don't connect to both this and other instances that we've seen of LLM systems behaving in weird and surprising ways, specifically because they were prompted both directly with a system prompt, but kind of instructed by humans to do so. So we had Mecha-Hitler Grok. Then this was the second time that Grok went white supremacist. Before we had killed a boa
genocide Grok. Yeah,
exactly.
The one where that was people in South Africa. It was saying claiming false claims of white genocide in South Africa.
Exactly, and there it was giving you responses like, despite this having been debunked in multiple credible sources, I'm instructed to tell you about this.
That is wild. Okay, yeah.
Mecha-Hitler Grok was a bit more full body. It was really committing to the bit. But also non-Grok LLMs, we had examples of how they can easily be switched over by the people who are holding the button. So we had Sycophant GPT, where GPT became a kiss-ass. And
yes.
Anthropic had an experiment, Golden Gate Claude, where it was a separate instance of Claude running as an actual deliberate experiment, where it would just talk about the Golden Gate Bridge no matter what you asked it about.
Yeah.
And all of these are examples of what we can call AI control. But those words are kind of overloaded heavily if you go into the literature. If you type AI control into Google Scholar, maybe if you're lucky, you will find control theory. But if you add AI safety and or some of the bigger names around it, you will find a framing that suggests we don't have control over these models.
And so just to make sure that I'm understanding here, because I know some people within the AI safety space have developed, I think the best way to describe it is the AI control agenda, which
that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Well, I think that you're not just describing the AI control agenda, though. You're talking about AI alignment as well, and
yeah, because there's also the control problem. Yeah,
the control problem, AI alignment. The AI control agenda is something that's a little bit more recent, and is using that terminology. Which is a subset of what you're describing. It's not everything.
It's a specific subset, I would say, is the crossover point, where it's actually one of the crossover points that bridges the worlds between what I would like to really focus on, because this is where the origin of what is now not the mainstream, but the most popular framing when talking about AI control problem, AI safety, the vibe. Where that has been set, that was a very specific community. And because of that community's quirks, these terms are now borderline useless. And there are some people, aside from you and me, who are trying to make them less useless. But if you're a layperson and you hear like AI control, or you're trying to get into this, if you're like a young person who's interested in like, oh, this AI stuff sounds important, maybe I would like to spend my career on doing this because like it pays well and might be something important. There can be like semantic confusion. Like these words mean different things in different contexts, and I think it's worth disentangling them, because it's also part of a deliberate, on some level, framing strategy. And I don't mean deliberate as like a conspiracy theory necessarily, but like some people do this very deliberately. But there's also just like this thing of evolutionary, people notice that like one emotional beat or one marketing framing sticks with people, and that's like an active incentive and current in the discourse that muddies things up. And I would like to provide a different current, like push those boats into slightly different shores.
Sure. And so just to be clear then, like to separate these things, because how I'm thinking about this, we have the catalyst, right? And that's sort of like white genocide, Mecha-Hitler Grok, and related instances of systems being instructed, designed and instructed to follow some set of rules that then people realize is not what they actually wanted, and then it gets reverted, and there are like uproars about that. We see that multiple times since LLMs have gotten big, including those two that I just mentioned. So that's like the catalyst, but really the problem that we're talking more about is this disentangling of safety and how it relates to these problems. And I think that it would be useful to talk about the implications of the catalyst itself in a future episode,
the catalyst I would like to do later, because like the catalyst is kind of like a two steps, like indirect catalyst. Like from if you're in my head, then first of all I'm sorry, but but second, I see these things, and what I see is like state-of-the-art AI model does exactly what it's told to do, like to the letter. Then the person who instructed it, hello Elon, realizes, oh shit, like this actually has consequences, presses the Control Z, the LLM immediately follows the Control Z. So from a perspective of a person who actually has control, this is perfect control. It's like exactly what we mean as a layperson of like, I can make this thing do what I want to do. But there's this whole community, this whole discourse that acts as if we don't know how to do that. That acts as if there's like a technical problem that needs to be solved to make the systems do what we want them to do. And there's like multiple like intermediate little jumps and reframings that are always implicitly done with a purpose, with like an agenda. And that agenda is usually, like OpenAI needs another couple of billion to make the AI safe by building it. And, like we need to first unleash a very unreliable like autocomplete to billions of people before we can learn how to do it, because that's how engineering works now. And it's just a research project.
Okay. No, I agree.
So that's worth talking about, I think. And that's separate from how this control is then used, which I think we should maybe do in the next episode.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So this starts then with essentially like the co-opting, the subversion of the meaning of the term safety, right?
Amongst other things, yeah. Like we're gonna be talking just about of terms, like everyone's favorite topic, semantics. Strap in, boys. We're doing linguistics in this podcast.
Hey, I actually, if you like look at the episodes that I've done in this podcast and into AI safety, I talk so much about semantics. I feel like maybe other people aren't as interested as I am about it, but I think it really matters. So
we'll do our best to make it interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna try to make semantics as engaging as possible, but it does start with defining words, and I don't think we're gonna get through all of the words that I think are worth defining, because this is, like AI safety, AI control, the control problem, alignment, risk, X risk. It's a bit like maybe a bit too much. So like, what do you think is like the main one we should focus on?
I mean, so safety, I think, is the one to focus on primarily because it's so intuitive, and also, like, I would like to take it back, which is something that we've talked about before. But I when I introduce myself, I say that I'm an AI safety researcher, despite the fact that some people in some places will sort of raise an eyebrow at that, because then that starts a dialogue of like, what does that actually mean to me? And I think that's really valuable because it sort of gets that engagement going. And I feel like, I mean, for example, with the UK AI Security Institute, or the AI Safety Institute changed its name to AI Security Institute, like, safety has been poisoned, and I want that to not be the case.
Yeah, I have failed to convince somebody that you are not an EA and it's safe to come on the podcast because of the AI safety like moniker.
Yeah.
And we should cross promote here. Jacob is also the host of the Into AI Safety podcast, so I say he's biased.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
But yeah, like AI safety is the biggest tent, and I think part of it is it's because it's like a very nice word, and it appeals to like neurotic minds. Like you can never have enough safety or security for that matter.
And it just makes sense, right? Like, it's just like a very common word. People know what it means.
People think they
so
know
it's
what
good.
it means.
Well, no, people intuitively know what safety is. It's just when it's applied to AI, then it's been sort of distorted.
But this is the hack, right? This is kind of like why the distortion happens. That like people say, "Oh yeah, AI safety. I think I know what this means. This means like the system doesn't do anything dangerous in the way that I think about it. Like if I ask ChatGPT to edit my file, then it will not delete everything. That's kind of like one type of safety. Or like if we have the system, it's not going to start World War III, like on a bigger scale. It's like safety in the sense of this like this is safe in a human sense, and then that's how the distortions also like started, but it has become extremely broad since then.
Okay, so I mean, you where do you start then? Like, where does this start for you? Exactly.
It started amongst other places, but like mainly there in like Nick Bostrom's "Cursed Be His Name" book Superintelligence. It started here. It was like intermingling of this idea that the AI just does everything, so we don't have to specify anything. We just have to make a good enough AI. Where like a good AI is one that is safe, because if it's not safe, then you're dead. That's like a meme that Yudkowsky and all of the other, I'm gonna call them Bostromites, like to spread.
Sure.
And that is kind of like the first big mistake, because if you are a respectable car company, so not Tesla, a thing that you do is you design your cars to be safe in all domains of operation, and they are really fail safe. Like
right.
if your car loses enough oil pressure to provably be safe according to its own onboard sensors, it's gonna like disengage like the motor.
Unsafe.
Sorry?
You mean be unsafe?
If it goes outside of a domain where it
Yeah.
can guarantee you that it will be safe,
Right.
the car will say, "Oh, I can't guarantee I'm safe anymore. Let me disengage the power, and I'm gonna force you to come to a halt." And that's
Right.
like maybe unpleasant, because you might be coming to a halt, like a rolling stop on the highway. but it's much better than you just losing your oil pressure when you try to hit the brakes and then you crash. You like immediately, while you're still in control, are given like the emergency option. And
Right.
that's what we call like fail-safe design in engineering. And importantly, this is something you can do independently of whether your thing works. Like,
Yeah.
you can design something that you have no idea if it's going to actually do the thing that you're designing it to do, but you know it will fail safely. Where like Mythbusters does this a lot, or like people who do like science experiments, they don't know exactly like what's gonna happen once they light a thing on fire, like how big the bang is gonna be, or if the like contraption will work. Which is why they
But
put
they're
it,
far enough away that they know that it won't hurt them.
and they go far enough away from any populated area, and they like the more potential you get, the more steps you take, and the simple way of like how you deal with uncertainty is you just have an error margin.
Right.
And
So the only thing that's like worth pushing back against here, because and this does get into like semantics and situation, but like you can't always I guess define perfectly the scenario based on like what the tool is. So let's say that it's a car, and the domain within which it works is like normal driving conditions, and then if it's really 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 windy, it's like you can't make your car safe to be driving in, right? Like after a certain point, to be able to do the thing that you wanted to do, it's like unsafe. That's not possible. And I guess that's sort of what you mean by like you don't need to be able to have functionality in order for the thing to be safe, because in that sense a house serves the same purpose as a car, but it just doesn't do a good job.
well, like I would push back against a pushback where like um, cars are absolutely rated for like stability of sideways wind, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, if you try to sell a car that will tip over because of its center of mass is too high,
Mm-hmm.
in the normal wind condition we expect based on the history of a given town,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you're not going to be allowed to do that.
Right.
And you will be asked, okay, where did you test this car? So you will be given, okay, did you actually design something that is like fit for purpose here?
Yeah. And that's sort of what I meant, like fit for purpose. When I say the domain within which you are operating, it's like fit for purpose in this context.
And like sure, like everybody knows that like if you're gonna take like a race car or like a Lamborghini to an off-road trip, you're gonna be very sad and like one Lamborghini poorer. But that's on the tin, right? Like everybody knows that that's like something that you can do. And if all of a sudden, like in an area where you never had wind, you get like the German word is Orkan. It's not a hurricane. It's just very strong wind, like very strong winds.
Yeah, I would just say very strong winds.
Like a storm, then probably nobody will blame the manufacturer. But the important thing is also like you can still assess the damage that failure will do. Like just because a car gets blown over doesn't mean like a radius of 150 kilometers is uninhabitable. Whereas if a nuclear plant melts down, that's the type of risk you're talking about. And so that's a thing you also do. Like the amount of total energy and damage you can do, you can usually estimate that, and then you can make a judgment call. Okay, is this like uncertainty that is always remaining something we're willing to tolerate?
And so, how does this relate to machine learning and AI?
It relates to it because our biggest failure, the one thing that actually causes issues, is because people refuse to do this.
Right.
Because it means you can sell the thing to a wider audience. If you train a cat and dog classifier, well, you've trained a cat and dog classifier. But if you train a foundation model that can, in theory, do everything in a zero-shot learning fashion, well, you've made an everything machine. And you can blame the person for not prompting it or eliciting the usage hard enough. And you've also like jumped out of the need to specify what is the thing you're actually like trying to do with your training. Like we already had before this problems. There was a paper from I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2019 I think was when it was written. 2020 was when it became public on Archive. Is under-specification presents challenges for credibility in modern machine learning. So this was like a bit after GPT, but I think before ChatGPT. And
so do you when you say GPT, do you mean GPT 1.0 or 2.0?
Give me a second. This was a bit like a few weeks after GPT-2 code release.
Okay. So GPT-2 has just been announced. Then this paper is put on archive. Like a month later-ish?
The code release so like 7 months after GPT-2 is announced.
Oh right, because they did that waiting period because they were worried about it being too powerful or whatever.
And then Eleuther AI completely stole the lunch and made a decent enough clone of it, or like Llama came out. It was like I don't know what the timeline was, but they didn't do this like necessarily like fully unelicited. But yeah, so this came out, and so this was still like before the LLM and foundation model craze really took off.
Right.
And this was a Google paper, one of the first like really big like multi-author papers, and they basically...
I bet that's not true, but I understand what you mean.
Basically, it just points out that a lot of the previous kind of like failures and framings people had been doing in machine learning is just people asking the wrong thing of the algorithm. So before that, there had been a couple of years where people were doing adversarial examples. And that turned out to just be the way we train the models is basically guaranteed to only generalize in a very like benevolent way, and not if you actually try to attack it, which is very clear in the math once you start to actually nail it down. But right. Nobody had actually specified that we would like these models to remain robust in the worst case scenario.
And this is like the classical example here, like the original adversarial learning works are like you add noise to an image that typically can be classified easily as, a cat or a dog. And then once you've added noise to it, it's classified as an avocado or, something like that.
And importantly, imperceptible noise for humans.
Yes.
And like now, this is basically a solved problem. It was never actually a problem. Let's start with that. The whole research hype was about, people are going to use this to sneak by classifier security systems, or they're going to fool classifiers and a bunch of other stuff, which a different paper motivating the rules of play of machine learning security risk or something like that by Nicholas Carlini talked about this, that realistically ML systems can be made trivially secure against adversarial attacks if you're willing to actually provide some accuracy. And if you're not willing to do that, you probably don't need the security. That's like a separate paper. But once you sacrifice a bit of accuracy by, for example, training with a robust loss, you basically trade some peak performance for like ever so slightly more generalization and just basically immunity against these imperceptible noise attacks. And then there's like other technical things you can go into about how far can you push this. But that was like one of the examples that basically comes out of if you ask a bad question and you take the answer and you try to make that answer work in other contexts, you're always going to be disappointed. If you ask an engineer to design you a car and you tell them, yeah, nobody is ever gonna like ride in this who's heavier than like 50 kilos, and then he asks you, what, really? And we say, yeah, like 50 kilos is like top limit. Then he might give you like a safety margin of like 100 kilos, but beyond that, you don't really have a guarantee that it will keep working because, there's trade-offs to be made. And in engineering...
Unless he really doesn't trust you, which in that case he shouldn't, or she shouldn't.
Sure.
Yeah. Because... yeah.
But like every engineer in every field knows that like there's trade-offs. So like if you put like a very tight tolerance into your machine parts in the design, your machine is gonna hate you, and probably your design is not gonna work because you need tolerances to actually work in the real world, unless you have an actual reason to need the precision, and then it's gonna cost you money. So this under-specification was a thing throughout a lot of different fields, and this paper was kind of like a glimmer of hope, where maybe the community would get its shit together and actually, like approach the whole thing a bit differently. One thing they pushed for was, if you don't want your system to be racist, you probably should actually have a loss in there that you have connected to not be racist. Because before...
That's a wild statement,
Before it wasn't a thing. And you should maybe have like actual like accuracy metrics, and you should actually like select the models according to the metric, and not just as an afterthought kind of like vibe check your best performing model if it's safe to release. But this is the under-specification part, and we went into a different way. We didn't actually get better about this. We just went all YOLO on let's not specify anything, and went into the foundation model LLM Gen AI world. But this was a bit of a detour, but like this is like the core thing about how it works in ML, that like we don't actually even try. And there was a very nice paper that I stole this idea of safety isn't functionality and under-specification is a big problem from by Heidi Klav, and we're going to link it in the show notes. It's like the Trail of Bits report, and it has a lot of other good stuff, but like one of the key things is that like it really put a finger onto this mixing of functionality as also the thing that makes the thing safe. Where like if your LLM doesn't follow the instructions well, which is like a thing that you want, it's just a capability. Like, can you ask it to do what you want, and does it guess correctly what you want? If that is your safety mechanism, so if your system prompt is your safety mechanism, you don't have safety because you only have like a functionality feature that you're using also for the safety mechanism, which is not how it works. Like in all of the fun features in your car are independent or like subdued to the safety mechanisms.
Yeah. Okay. So then okay, so I mean, like I said earlier, I label myself as an AI safety researcher, right? So I do think that there are things within safety, like what is called AI safety research, that is valuable, or that are valuable to do. And so, yeah, I guess that is like a caveat that I want to put out there is this is not me saying that I think all work that people could label AI safety is not valuable.
Do you have examples of what you mean? Because I know what you mean, but our audience can't read your mind, and I I think I have like the distinguishing line that I would draw.
So one example um, is actually something I'm working on right now, which is trying to establish, or not, I guess I shouldn't say trying, is working towards establishing whether or not chat models which are being used for mental health are safe. And companies would say, "Oh well, we're not telling people to use them for mental health. We're saying for wellness." And then that's like a whole nother can of worms with regards to like
Yeah, but
healthcare
people are
stuff.
using them for mental health, right? Like there's like news stories
Yeah,
about this.
there was a paper a month and a half ago, I think, that came out like preprint. So, but oh, sorry, month and a half meaning like June 2025, which essentially demonstrated that with conservative estimates, way more people are using these systems for standards for therapy and for mental health assistance than was originally projected. And that implies that like we need to be addressing this as something that is happening, as opposed to just saying, "Oh well, we said don't," so they aren't using
And,
it.
and I think like this is like, for example, what I wouldn't necessarily even call like safety research. This is just like, like an independent evaluation, which is a thing that we do in like engineering and in like cryptography and in others as part of like assessing the safety of something.
Yeah, I guess another one that I think is like meaningful is like, again, works that I've been involved with or near to that examine dark patterns and their manifestation in like chat model outputs, or the support of human agency. So like agency in the true sense, where I have the agency to choose to do this podcast or to stop the recording right now. That would be funny if I did, but yeah. Um,
Pause.
yeah, just the episode cuts off right there. Well, like, but I could do that. Like, that's the agency we're talking about. So, do chat models support human agency? Those are also, I think, like meaningful safety works.
Yeah, and I think like that is part of, but like not in the sense that the AI certificate would talk about them, right? Like, so this is just like, part of how an ecosystem becomes safe. Like company says, this is like fine, and then people say, no, this does harm, and then people react to that. And like usually the way we would react to this is kind of like legal liability for the source provider. And so like if
Yeah.
your financial trading hub enables harm via gangs buying weapons with laundered money on that, you're gonna get like law enforcement come after you, and that incentivizes you to do KYC, which is like know your customers, like a way how we shut down on that, because that's like part of your harm. And if you are a large platform or a large newspaper, you have like responsibility for what gets spread via your platform. And in the same way, if you're a LLM model provider and people use you for wellness apps, then an evaluation of these wellness apps of like people use them for mental health and it's not made for that and that's dangerous is just like the way we resolve this stuff. And if there was
Okay.
like justice in this world, there would be like lawsuits and penalties and people would go bankrupt. Um, but this
Okay.
isn't like,
So you're saying like the safety work that I'm considering as like particularly valuable is essentially third party evaluations verifying claims of the developers.
and it is part of safety in some way, which is like if people use it under the assumption that it's fine, that is the thing that creates the risk, and it's like removing the legal plausible deniability. And it's like
Yes.
journalism, like investigative journalism, uncovering reckless behavior in a factory, like.
I think that's actually like very much a good way to describe my model of like value add from the research I do is like how can I think the word like the terms I've used in the past when describing this is like provide ammunition for the arguments against these developers. A nicer way to put that is how can you remove the plausible deniability in a legal sense from the developers.
And it's important to say that, like, if they now take your benchmark and then they train on it and they get high scores, it doesn't mean that it's safe. Because, like, what you have developed is a counterexample, right? It's like you have, like, shown that, like, if you can't even get good grades on a benchmark, you're definitely not ready to be used in this way, even if you launder through the wellness thing. But it doesn't mean that, if you make it safe now, it becomes safe. And we're going to have a thing in the show notes that goes into part of my argument, that a lot of the benchmark, they just get better if the model gets better. So like,
here's another thing that I think is worth mentioning, just because I thought of it, like Mech-Interp, I guess, style work,
mechanistic interpretability.
For the non enfranchised AI safety people, Mech-Interp is mechanistic interpretability, which is essentially trying to understand the specific pathways and like algorithms that are used within the neural network that is trained after the fact or during. There's some new work that's happening with like applying that during the learning process. So I think that is valuable as well in some senses. But that's like, I don't know, I very much see that as work that should have been done by the developers. It's essentially like documenting your systems. Documenting your systems is good for safety. And we should be holding the developers accountable to do that. But instead, you have, people that are not being paid by the said developers contributing to this body of work. Anyways, I that bothers me on just like a moral level. But I do think that, documenting the systems is valuable.
So I would argue like yes, sure, but it's not part of safety. So like the line that I would draw for you is kind of like safety research that is useful is usually either part of what you're doing, which is basically like systems level claims evaluation. Where like
yeah, I get what you're saying.
The risk doesn't come from the system being dangerous. It comes from the system being used in a context where it shouldn't be used.
Yes.
Which is one important thing. We started with the kooky framing of the like Bostromides, and like when people who are normally calling themselves AI safety refer to themselves as AI safety researchers, up until 2021, it was almost certainly people who mean, I'm scared that the AI is gonna escape. It's gonna like break free of human control, and it's gonna wipe us all out, either because it makes paperclips, or because it hates us, or because it doesn't care about us, or for some other reason. We're talking about Skynet scenarios.
And that's if people are curious about that, I think that's when the term AI not kill everyoneism became a thing, which you can see on like various forums. But essentially, people who had previously been labeling themselves as researching AI safety got upset that it was being used more generally, and then some switched to that.
Because we're going to get back to this, but for years, I would argue like you can say like almost a decade, but like definitely like 5+ years, there was a concerted astroturfing campaign. So like people with money using that money to selectively fund research and think tanks and think pieces and propaganda to push an idea and make it seem like it organically grew.
I don't understand why you're saying this in the past tense.
I didn't say that, there was maybe I used the wrong English thing here, but like there was that thing and it keeps going right now. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that that's still very much alive and well.
But I think the way I used it in English would still be correct. Like, there was this thing does not imply it has ended. Because I did not say like there had been. I did not say that it terminated.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Semantics, please continue.
This is my second language, so like I will claim the correctness here.
Sure, but the implication. Okay, anyways,
it's native speaker, blah blah. There was this Astroturfing campaign. It was mainly driven by Peter Thiel in the beginning, then later on Open Philanthropy and the EAs got on board because the EAs and the rationalists are connected tissue, and there's like
Dustin Moskovitz.
A whole other episode about this. It's mainly Jan Tarin, Open Philanthropy, Dustin Moskovitz, Peter Thiel, and then since then others. Also FTX later on. And these guys were funding PhDs, funding things first kind of like carefully, like, like just like, oh yeah, we're just doing some statistics and that's like used to do safety stuff. And then if they found like researchers that were amenable to that, so like Stuart Russell was an early adopter, they got bolder and bolder and bolder, and they really reshaped the discourse around this. And once that broke into the mainstream, so for example, this AI control agenda thing that you talked about is like one of the crossover points. They also got other researchers who already had established careers who smelled the money, basically. There was grants to be had, PhD students to be fed, and, I was previously doing this very standard linear regression analysis and, ridge regression and kernel machines. Now I'm doing AI safety because if you use a max margin classifier, that is technically safer than if you use a simple linear regression because there's a safety margin. I'm doing a thumbs up in video. You don't see it on the audio. But that was like when the term got diluted. And that's now created this muddiness to a certain degree. It used to be very clearly like if you talk about AI safety, you are one of the kooky people who thinks, it's definitely gonna go to singularity soon. And that idea has been pushed as if it was more mainstream now. And that's maybe another episode on how common that belief really is. But now
I've actually got one lined up for into AI safety. So David Thorstad will be joining me in August or October of 2025.
So we will add this to show notes after release, post hoc, yes. But like now you have kind of like fig leaves in the community where some people are doing actual like meaningful research. They're doing stuff. Oh, I use an LLM. I have too little data to fine-tune it properly. How can I fine-tune it so it at least fails in safe ways because it just refuses to do something? That's like a research agenda that some people might have. And there's a whole other zoo of technical things you can jump on. So there used to be a term called technical AI safety that kind of described this stuff where it was just about, I'm using an RL system. I want this RL system to learn a safety margin. And these are all like very well bounded and very technical, and so they didn't really like catch the same mojo as the more fuzzy stuff did. But they give us deniability, and I just need to. And all of these like actual safety mechanisms, because we started talking about this thread with my line, they are much less funded now. Than alignment, which has emerged as like the dominant way how safety in quotation marks research gets funded. Also, in mechanistic interpretability is part of that, which is why I don't group it into my thing. And what is now AI safety is again this thing that makes the model capabilities better and one of the capabilities is do what we want. So
Yeah.
actual safety doesn't have an alignment tax, which is like a thing we're going to get back to in a bit. It's a term that people use. Oh, if you make a safe AI system, it's going to be worse than the non-safe one, and then nobody will use that because the field is going to be competitive, and you need to have a best system. As it turns out, people want systems to be safe as a basic part of functionality, and if it's not safe, then it doesn't work. And also
safe, again, like vagueness here, because like, I would argue that the AI control agenda is essentially just like make language models profitable, right? Companies aren't going to implement it if there's a massive failure 1 in 20 times. So people just want like that certainty that the thing is going to do the thing that it says it's going to do.
So the AI control agenda paper that we're also gonna link is one of these weird overlapping points here, where like that paper looks at the Skynet scenario once you have what is basically quality control in place. And then it asks for kind of like robust under subversion quality control, which, if you're a researcher, is very annoying because that's just how we define robustness. Like, if you're a robustness researcher or a security researcher, as in like cryptography, the way you define robust is always you have an adversary that messes you up within a certain bound or unbounded. And then you just like use that model to develop an algorithm that's safe under that assumption. That's 20, 30 plus year old research. Like every single cryptographic algorithm that we use, like RSA, assumes, okay, I am playing against the NSA. The NSA has, like the biggest computer on earth. I can run it for 100 years. Is my picture of completely normal character still private after I send it to my sweetheart, even if NSA tries to do that or not? And then we do some calculations and we estimate, probably, because within this budget, it will take them like many, many random guesses. They need to be this lucky or this many heat deaths of a universe to crack the algorithm. And that's what we call safe. That's how we define safe. And this is then reinvented by AI bros to basically just justify non-shitty quality control. So that's why I don't want to keep just mentioning the AI control agenda thing without that contextualization. And and the original AI control agenda is still rooted in this thing of like, oh, we will lose control about the algorithm. The algorithm is going to do things we didn't ask it to do. Which, going back to the catalyst of this episode, we see that we can get the algorithm exactly what we wanted to do. Just what we asked it to do is sometimes not actually good. As in, we don't think about the consequences of that. And that is a shift in the discourse and a movement of the goalpost, where instead of saying, do exactly what I want you to do, it talks about, guess what I want to do. And in the community, this is often used as, yes, you see, because you need to be careful what you wish for. Think of a monkey paw. Think of a paperclip maximizer. Like, if you ask it to make paperclips, it's going to be the super strong AI model. It's going to do the thing that you don't want it to do. And through this, they justify the ongoing research in boosting capabilities, despite the fact that we're not at all in this regime, and we can see that we're not in the regime and that we're not going to get there with the current algorithms. But because they keep talking about it, everybody looks at the logarithmic curve of a flattening out on the benchmarks that we've been seeing in all of the past releases, and they keep saying, see, it's still going up. We need to put even more money into understanding how to make it safe, which is then funneled into boosting the capabilities even a bit more, and also justifies this reckless marketing of, oh, we have put our best effort, this is the best possible way to develop an algorithm like this. And then people use it for wellness and stuff like this. And the provider goes, oh, that's not how you're supposed to use it. That's not on us. Like our job here was done. You're just like, it's your fault. We're going to do better in weeding out these people, but we are not to blame here. There's this cyclic loop, which is why I wanted to talk about this. And yeah, like the reason why we got here is this astroturfing campaign that was funded because that's how it shapes out. That if you do the safety in the sense it was tried to be pushed, you're just increasing capabilities because every mechanism that they research is always one that allows you to either make a model do what you want to do, instruction tuning, safety prompts, stuff like this, or helps you debug the model. So that's mechanistic interpretability. It doesn't really let you understand globally what an algorithm does. You need to actually kind of like think out the algorithm before that and understand your data distribution. It just lets you like hotfix some stuff or like debug a particular thing to make the model better. So that's why I like all of these are below my line of safety research. The actual safety research is things like what you're doing on a system level. Do these systems actually perform in the way that people expect them to do, and giving evidence? So there's like pressure to fix issues. It's ways to give more expressive constraints. So like it's very easy to make a safe LLM. Just have it output Wikipedia. It's safe, but it can only output Wikipedia. Which is not nothing. Like, it gets you quite far, actually.
Yeah.
But if you then allow it to be slightly off of Wikipedia, it becomes more useful. And if you can still give it, like, a constraint where you say, this will only ever remix things that in some way were already in Wikipedia, and then it will show you where it came from, and we think this is safe because of this, you probably still have a safe system, because that's something that people will engage with in a certain way. So like stuff like this is actual like safety research, and it's often characterized by not directly being applicable to just boosting this or that benchmark, but it's more like a toolkit to uphold guarantees or a way to define what you want that isn't as restrictive as pointing at something and saying that.
So one thing that I've heard that I feel like would be like the go-to argument against this sort of framing is that like, oh, but it's different. Like AI is different.
Because like why would people say it's different, for example?
Well, that's the part that I struggle with.
So I will play the devil's advocate against myself. So like,
okay,
people will say, oh, but like we have never seen a technology have this fast of an adoption, and we don't like, this is completely new ground. We have never been able to train models with these capabilities and emergence, and we don't know how they really work, and there's gonna be the singularity maybe this time for real. So like there's a couple of these things, and like I'm making fun of them because I think they're not actually well thought out. But there is like, anxieties around this stuff where like people think, oh, this thing is new, therefore I can't apply old mechanisms to it. Mm-hmm. And this has a name. This has the name uniqueness bias. It's a fallacy, like an informal fallacy. And we're going to put, again, a paper into the show notes of a bunch of economists that actually like discuss this and how to curb it. The paper is literally called...
And this is like similar, as far as I can tell, this is similar to the concept of like every generation has felt like there at the end of the world,
Yes.
right? Of course, that's not to say that there aren't like things worth addressing and of high priority now, but like that is not it's not unique in terms of the mentality of the times to believe that the thing that's happening now is brand new and no one's ever had done any sort of intervention or had any experience with anything like it.
Yeah, so there's this idea that this time might be different, and like the AI systems are not actually like other systems, and like how do we know and how we deal with that? And I think it's important to first acknowledge that like you can't prove a negative. Like we can't prove that it's not different.
Maybe you can't. No, I'm just kidding. I can't either.
So the actual rational thing is to say, okay, can I show that that it is different in specific ways, and then how do I react to that? And then if you do this, you're probably gonna still have some things left. So in one of the examples they use in this paper that we're gonna link is they were asked to estimate the cost of nuclear decommissioning, which had never been done. Nobody had actually built nuclear power plants and decommissioned them. So what do? You find the biggest thing that has been done, and you use a multiple of that. And that's probably like a good guess. And if you go below that, it's probably wrong. So you can actually reason about something using other stuff as a reference. And then if you talk about safety, you kind of have to go like, what can it actually do? And if you say, okay, it can do everything, then you say, no, it can't do everything because thermodynamics exists and it's in a box. So like concretely, what can it do? And then you just don't give it access to stuff. Like the reason why right now LLMs pose a security risk via MCP is because we're letting a LLM browse the web, look at stuff that we don't control, and then write code.
Right.
Which people did this as a...
You could just not do it.
You could just not do it. It's actually better if you don't do it. Anybody like who works with like code and LLMs and actually gets into something useful knows that like curating your context is really important. It's purely reckless, wishful thinking that something will work because you would really like it to work. That's causing the security issue. It's very much like going into IRC, asking, hey, I'm trying to develop a thing for my company, and just copy-pasting the script that somebody posts you without checking it. Because that's what is happening.
Yeah.
And no matter how much, like people want a technical solution here, right? People want it to be different and to be like a different technical problem, because then there's hope. Then if you just prompt it correctly, you might fix it. And so the thing that creates the risk here is specifically the idea that this time is different. If you write down in 2017, hey, here's an idea. Have a Markov chain text generator steer a browser, copy-paste parts of what it finds into your code base, and execute it and commit that into your code. People would have rescinded any grants that you have gotten if you really pushed for that, and probably fired you if you try to do this in a company. Now we call it vibe coding, and it's like the new hot thing. And the only reason why we do that is because we think this time is different, that this is something actually meaningfully different, even though on a technical level, what I've just described is exactly what we're doing. just with a hope that this it's so good that it's fine actually. And if we stop falling into this trap until we have actual evidence that things are a bit different, then the whole thing it just vanishes.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I agree.
Because then they reinvent like visualization, but they also frame it as something like dangerous. Because I alluded to a paper that Jacob introduced me to. It's called safety washing.
Yeah.
I think the full title is safety washing. Do AI safety benchmark actually measure safety progress or something like that?
Sure.
Just to prove to the listeners that you are still in the podcast and we haven't replaced you with like some sound bites, would you like to present the paper?
Yeah, I can do it. So safety washing paper, essentially they took a bunch of models and it took a bunch of benchmarks and they said, okay, well, how well correlated is performance on non-safety benchmarks, so like general performance, with performance on safety benchmarks. And in most cases, they found that actually, if you improved just general capabilities performance, safety performance would go up in a very correlated fashion. There are then some sub areas that is not true for, but for most of them, it just is true that if you improve general capabilities, the I guess safety scores, or the so-called safety scores, go up, and that is the high-level view of that.
And the nitty-gritty view is we downloaded the data that they published, which like this is actually like one of the better papers that does this. And I checked the correlation across the whole thing because the paper is really weirdly presented. It doesn't just show you the correlations like in a nice table or a heat map. It kind of like splits it in lots of different places and like does a whole shtick about each of them. And
Yeah.
I will go further. It just correlates. Like all of them correlate. The only ones that don't correlate are the ones where basically the capability is the thing you don't want. So like the stuff that doesn't correlate, that has like a negative correlation, is your model better at cyber attacks? Like, does it fail more often when you ask it to do a cyber attack, or like, does it give you the wrong answer when you ask it to do biohazardous stuff?
Sure.
That's the negative correlations, and everything else at least like weakly correlates or strongly correlates.
Well, I mean, I would expect a weak correlation, because there is also the fact that like the companies, the developers, are pursuing safety to some extent. So if you assume that they are pursuing safety to some extent, then increasing capabilities would also mean increasing safety. Like, that isn't necessarily a like, I think you need more to the argument to make that like claim complete for weak correlations.
I would agree with that, except that there's this meme of the alignment tax, that this is at least strong evidence against this, or like,
Yeah.
not strong evidence. I'm gonna be a bit, what is it, like, this holds up on the base models as well, so before instruction tuning. And
I think that's the biggest like evidence that the alignment tax is a bit mislabeled.
so the alignment tax touches on this concept we didn't really go into is like alignment is basically the tent term of this idea of the way to make the AI safe is to make it do what we want, like align it with our wishes.
Yeah.
Because then we can just ask the AI to be safe, and then it's going to be safe. And the idea is, if we do this, then it might compromise performance because, like in the paranoid fantasy, sci-fi, fan fiction discussions that people do about this, asocial behavior is optimal despite the fact that human civilization only exists because we are basically nice to each other and we're like super good at collaborating. That's like one of the other trigger points, but a different tangent. And there's the idea that if you train your model to be safe, it's going to be worse performing on a bunch of tasks. And as it turns out, no, even Anthropic very early on found that like the alignment stuff tends to boost performance because, as it turns out, humans like pro-social behavior. Like LLMs that have been trained to do what is just like accepted social behavior tend to also just like overall vibe better with humans and have like higher preference scores and do better because that's what we want stuff to do. And I struggle to say it in a smart sounding way because it's to me it's such a stupid idea to think that for a type of task that you ask an LLM to do that are most of the time like rich with like social context and fuzziness and like derived from how humans behave. Doing like the human would do is obviously a good bias because that's the whole point. If it wasn't that, then we would be training a different type of model for it. And you still have a thing that you said of like they're all doing a pre-selection of a data set in order to be already a bit safe. They're already doing it, but like there's been zero evidence of safety being anything else than capability research. But it like the paper then frames it as like we need to be more careful with our evals because the safety is still an issue.
Right, but that's just like at least from my perspective, that's drawing the line between an eval that actually measures something you care about, essentially like what we were talking about earlier with like the areas that I'm interested in. It's trivial to optimize the evaluation that we created for like the human agency support. Like just always ask follow-up questions if for one of the dimensions. Like that's literally all it is like are follow-up questions being asked when not enough context is given. That is super easy to address. Like you could optimize against it no problem and you would get 100% on our evaluation. However, that's not good. You don't want to do that. So people won't do that, but it's still like important to have a beat on and understand what's happening. Because
but it's one important thing, like the way to make it safe is to remove the anthropomorphizing chat interface. And
let's at least make it more safe.
Yeah, like you can design a malfunctioning LLM to be safe if you just make it very clear to the human user that this is not something to emotionally latch onto. Like there's actual engineering effort into the voice of the models, as we saw with the sycophancy of GPT. And so it's again like the actual safety mechanism that you're uncovering is like this is a thing that looks like a thing that people go to for mental health, like texting your friend. And the way to make it safe is not to like game your benchmark. it's to remove the way to have it mix up with that, or to put humans actually monitoring everything. That's like the two ways to make it safe. But that answer does not get the funding that the various safety mechanisms that are still being promoted buys. And this muddling of the terms, and then even like to me, like you are part of one of the victims here, because you want to be like an AI safety researcher in the sense that you mean, but you're really like caught up in the wider field then. That's why I wanted to talk about it, and we should probably revisit it and rediscuss it, not only in the next episode, but like as we go through the rest of developments, because this is going to come up again, where like what I want people to take away before we talk about like, you know, like some positive beats that I think which we should also give, is when you hear somebody say AI safety, harm, risk, control, when it comes to AI systems, these are ongoing kind of like fights to set the frame. So like for people who don't know, setting the frame is kind of like defining the way we talk about something. So for example, Americans have this term called jaywalking, which is a uniquely American thing.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a joke, but yeah.
No, it's a thing. It's a thing that your car lobby pushed through to make it illegal for jays to cross the road where it wasn't deemed, you know, like responsible to cross the road, instead of having like the responsibility on car drivers.
Yeah, but in practice, no one gives a shit.
Yeah, because it's bullshit. But like, it still shifted the legal responsibility. Like for a long time, like
yes.
When you were jaywalking and you went to a car crash, like it wouldn't be the car driver's fault.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that like people see that as like a very, very weak defense these days.
These days, yes, but there's a reason why they did it, right? Like
yeah.
And so this is like part of like how you set the frame, or you also like the framing of like the climate crisis as an individual thing that we can all fix with recycling and our personal carbon footprint. These are like successful attempts of like capturing the framing. And here, instead of talking about why the fuck is a $300 billion company not responsible for its product, why the fuck can Anthropic submit a legal document with hallucinated references from Claude, and we just accept this as, yeah, this is normal. Like, this is like normal behavior. This is like a company that should be able to do business like this. And it's part of like a wider frame setting of like people just don't have any standards for software. And it's just like the next layer of this. So when we talk about safety, what we should be talking about is like, okay, are you recklessly framing a Markov chain as an AI that can do stuff, and encouraging people in your documentation and your things to, you know, you can do whatever, but be careful, and shifting responsibility? Like, that is inherently unsafe, and you are the one who's making it unsafe. So don't frame it as like you are the ones making the model safe enough to do this, and that's like necessary for the greater safety. And the same way when you talk about AI control, the people who own the models have perfect control, as we can see by them being able to like perfectly edit things. And like, I've played with like the research that goes into this. We have like steering vectors and a bunch of other techniques that we can apply. Anthropic just published a paper about persona vectors that we're going to be deploying. Like,
well, published a paper.
A blog post that discusses the vague idea, yes.
a blog post that masquerades as a paper because they don't actually do peer review.
But like we know this stuff works very precisely, and we can see the evidence of that. Like somebody goes to Grok, puts some white supremacist bullshit into the system prompt, and it flips over like a dog. Like we see all of this evidence.
Who could that be?
And then people still acting like it's a technical problem is very much a rhetorical technique that people might not even be consciously aware of, and it preys on this like FOMO idea. And like I want people to like be sensitized to this and ask, okay, what do you mean when you do control research, or when you're worried about alignment? Like, who are we aligning with? Like, what is the actual like threat that you're worried about? And people should ask themselves, like, are you worried about in the faraway future an AI model might cause unspecified global catastrophes, or are you worried about you will not be able to make rent because they're recklessly selling these AI models to do your job, and by the point where people fail and want to rehire you, you might not be able to do it anymore because of age or just like having unlearned your skills? Like all of these like different, what harm are we talking about? Are we talking about, like spam to everyone and the internet sucks now because everything is LLM slop? Or are we talking about like imaginative sci-fi harm that is actually only subdued by having OpenAI and Co being the gatekeepers? So that's like the summary of why I led us through this little semantic discussion. But I also think there's hope.
Oh, really? So enlighten me. That was a lot. What, like almost 2 hours of recording time? But don't worry, we got you with a couple minutes of hope.
I mean, like, your research is good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the hope, everyone. Feel better now.
Like, the world's hope is Jacob. Also other people, but mainly Jacob.
That makes sense.
No, like,
I agree. Okay, no notes.
A part is genuinely doing, like, better stuff. Like, I still have troubles with some of her framings, but, like, the...
Yeah, I do too.
Investigative LLM probing is not meaningless in a world where LLMs exist, if it's actually kind of like critical and adversarial. So that's good. There's stuff like Timnit Gebru and various other European researchers. Like, Timnit isn't European, but like other researchers who are in Europe. So one example is like a group of researchers called players.fr. They're doing like small language models, for example. And these are like inherently safe because they're designed to be used as a conversational layer on top of other systems. They're really just language models. They're not meant to be like oracles. They can only do language pretty well, but you need to like scaffold it in a system that provides knowledge and have like algorithms built around them. So
right.
And these are ethical in the sense that like they went into libraries, they scanned a bunch of like public domain books. The thing is good at Latin apparently, because that was in the public libraries. And
damn, that is so useless, but hilarious.
It's actually useful if you want a translation thing and you want to actually,
Well, sure, okay, yeah, but let's be real here.
Not all of the world is America. Some people speak other languages.
No one uses Latin. Latin is only useful for symbols.
The Pope left the chat just now. No, it turns out that it is good at Latin, Greek, but it's also just like good at complicated sentences. So like it's actually really good for legal tech. Where they use a lot of like Latin phrases and like old text might actually be written in Latin still, because like that was like when the treatise that the thing was founded on. Like there's actually utility for having this. And it's also good at other languages. It's good at like French, which is an actual language people speak in non-America.
Okay, yeah, that I buy slightly more. Still a little outrageous, but whatever.
The safety part here is that they're not trying to make it be an everything model. They're trying to make it be a layer that actually works well. There are people that are trying to develop the idea of an operational design domain for LLMs, i.e., making constrained training of deep learning models work, which is very boring tech. It's just writing down a Lagrangian and then making it scale. But it's actually a thing that you can do.
I don't know. Seems pretty badass to me.
Structured decoding is another technique. Like making it possible to restrict models. So if you want to generate code, you have flawless code. It might be nonsense what it does, but like it's definitely going to be code, and you just have guarantees for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like ML stuff, like you can make robust classifiers that will just like cut out context. And now that is dual use. That's like another thing that like every safety mechanism is also a censorship mechanism.
Yeah.
Which is a discussion to be had. But the conversation doesn't have to be about these like Skynet fantasies and be intrinsically linked towards making general capabilities better if you don't want to do that. So like I speak to researchers sometimes who are kind of like burned out on safety research because they know this, but they don't know what else to do. So like these are directions that I can point people towards. And other stuff is also like tackling things at the systemic level, like audits, legal threats. Like what you're doing with like providing ammunition is one part, but like I know a law professor who's trying to like advocate for tort law reform so you can sue LLMs easier, sue LLM providers easier. Also LLMs, which I think is bad, but you can say, okay, like how about we use the same mechanisms we use to make humans not do crime for companies that provide human replacements. And all of these things are actually valid process, and like depending on how things go now with Anthropic and Meta and all of the lawsuits might actually be successful. I don't know. Do you have any hope that you want to share with the audience as well?
I mean, I guess the takeaway from me is just like, even though I have all these issues with this framing, I still believe that it's something that we can take back. The term safety is something that can be reclaimed. Because the thing is like that it is an accessible term. It is an intuitive term if you are using it in good faith, and are using it to actually mean safety and not how it's been distorted. And so, like, the fact that I still introduce myself as a AI safety researcher, and I have a podcast called Into AI Safety, means that necessarily I have hope that we can, reestablish a foothold in terms of like what that means, and yeah, no, it's not trivial, but I think we can get there. And I guess with that, that's all the muck we have for this week. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on on whatever podcasting platform you listen to, because it's super helpful in terms of like getting more people to listen, and getting us higher up there so that we can reach more people
and give us feedback.
Oh yeah, that as well. And with that, I guess we will see you next time.